So in the last episode, we began with a simple but radical claim that change is not a byproduct of existence. Change is existence. And with change comes causality, the tether that binds the present to the past. But if change is the foundation, then it cannot be arbitrary. It must come with limits. Think about this. If change could happen infinitely fast, there would be no way to tell what something was from what it is. No distinction could survive. Change, to be meaningful, requires a duration, a before and after. Therefore, every universe must carry within it a maximum rate of change, a ceiling beyond which differences cannot appear. But this limit, it brings with it a mirror image. If there's a maximum rate of change, then there must also be a minimum interval of change, a smallest distinguishable moment, a fundamental tick of reality. Below this threshold, no difference can be made. Nothing can be said to have changed at all. This insight transforms our picture of time. Time cannot be a smooth continuum, endlessly divisible. Instead, it arrives in packets, in indivisible units of change. Moments are not continuous. They are finite, countable, discrete. But a moment cannot exist in isolation. A purely temporal instant, empty of form, would be meaningless. What makes a moment real is that it carries a difference, that it embodies change in some structure. And so the minimum unit of change is never purely temporal. It is always temporal and spatial together. Every moment is a union, a duration carrying a form. And this has consequences. It means that if there is a minimum moment, there must also be a minimum length, a smallest possible scale at which differences can appear. Space, like time, is not infinitely divisible. It is quantized at the root. So if there's a smallest time and there's a smallest length, there must also be a minimum energy tied to the smallest possible change. Energy, too, it's bounded, above and below. Change comes with its own economy, the least it can cost and the most it can sustain. But this also means something else. All change is impeded change, bounded, resisted, delayed. This is not incidental. It is essential. Without impedance, change would unravel into chaos. No tether would bind before to after. No coherence would survive. Without resistance, there would be no causality, no structures, no physics at all. And here lies the key. Impedance does more than stabilize. It also creates form. It is what breaks symmetry. Perfect symmetry is pure potential, undifferentiated, no direction, no structure, no difference. If change were unimpeded, this perfect symmetry would never be broken. Nothing would ever settle. No form would ever rise. But impedance resists. It bounds, it delays, it forces distinctions. It produces asymmetries. It gives structure. Symmetry breaking is not an accident. It is the direct consequence of impeded change. And once symmetry is broken, difference becomes possible. With difference, real change emerges. And with change, the possibility of evolution and order. Think of it this way. Without resistance, there would be no difference between left and right. No arrow of time. No separation of matter from antimatter. no preference for one vacuum over another. Without impedance, the universe would remain a perfect, featureless blur. But with impedance, patterns emerge, directions appear, structures crystallize. The world as we know it unfolds. So the maximum rate of change and the minimum tick of reality are not just technical details. They are the very conditions that make physics possible. They ensure that the universe does not collapse into uniformity, but instead generate the richness and variety that we see. They explain why we don't live in a perfect symmetrical nothing, but in a universe of galaxies and stars and atoms and thoughts. In this way, limits are not constraints. They are the creative ground of reality. The universe exists not in spite of its limits, but because of them.